Well, hello. It's been a while since I made one of these videos. Over a week. It's kind of crazy. So, this is my day 71 through 79 video. And I'm gonna title it something along the lines of like midterms, huh? So yeah, I made like a post, like a community post, I'm like, no uploads for a while. I really need to focus on studying. So, yeah. Last video was Friday, which like party, had fun with friends. And Saturday, Sunday was a bit of like recovery days for me. I really didn't get much done. I like reread through all my physics, all my chem notes as studying, but that's nothing to be honest. It's just like refreshed the information mostly. Then yeah, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I was like an academic weapon. Like I would wake up and just study the entire day. I left my room like 2, 3 times a day tops, and it was to go eat. Like I left to eat and I come back and I study. Like practically zero social interaction. I was just like buried here. One night I went and like I played poker for like an hour and a half ish with some friends. That was fun. But yeah, other than that, I was just here studying, reviewing everything. I was especially focused on chem because I knew that like I had a feeling that would be harder. So like I really wanted to like get a good grasp of chemistry so I could like get a good grade. Yeah, I was like doing past midterms for chemistry. Like they released 2020, 2021, 2022. So like I did 2020 like first like basically after just reading the notes I took it to see like where I'm at and I got a 60 on it. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's not that bad considering barely any review. Then like I studied a bit more. I took the 2021 midterm. I got like an 80 something on it. I'm like, okay, like I'm feeling better, you know, like the knowledge is like circulating in my head. Is like it's all up here, like I know it. And then yeah, like then like I went back to studying physics a bit like over the days. Then like Wednesday night, I took like the 2022 midterm, and I got like a 60 something again on it. And like the 2022 midterm was really hard. Oh, like it was really not good. And like I went and read, and like the average for the midterm for like 2022 was 54 on the exam. So yeah, it was bad, and that made me like lose all confidence I have for chemistry because I'm like, well, if this is difficult, then like, what is my chemistry midterm going to be like? Right? But at that point, I couldn't really focus on chemistry anymore because then, like Thursday, I had to really focus on physics and study for the midterm like Thursday. So like I set chemistry aside. I was just like went all in on physics, like reviewed everything. Everything clicked into place pretty much last minute. I asked the I went to a help session like on Zoom. I asked a couple questions to a TA. I'm like, I tried solving this question through this approach rather than this approach. Like, why was I wrong? And the TA like couldn't help. So that was great. I also asked a couple other questions. I'm like, why are we able to use like a constant pressure coefficient in a system where the pressure is changing? And the TA is like, there's a really hard derivation that proves that you are able to. So like just ignore it and just use it. So like basically all my questions were like answered with just like fuck off. So that was great. But yeah, then time for like physics midterm showed up and like it was good. It was really not bad. There was one multiple choice question that was really difficult. Like I remember reading it and I'm like, holy crap, like we're missing so many like details and so much information. How are we supposed to solve this? Like we had like basically 3 unknowns, but like one of them was like half given, so you could solve for that. So like 2 unknowns, and like I'm just like working through it, and I get to the point where I'm like, I have 2 unknowns. Like I don't know what the hell to do with this, but I kind of had like a similar situation happen in the first midterm where like I was solving one of the written problems and I got to 2 unknowns and I'm like, oh wait, this has to be wrong. So like I went and like reworked it incorrectly. So I'm like, wait, like I won't repeat that same mistake. And I just kept working through a problem, like some like manipulation variables and whatnot. And basically I got to the point where it's like xy is equal to 44. And one of my like initial formulas that I need for the answer uses like xy basically. I'm like, you know what, like let's plug it back in. Like I'm plugging into the calculator, I'm like figuring it out. And I'm like, no way like this works out. And like I get an answer like 1286, which is one of the answer choices. I'm like, oh, like hallelujah. So yeah, that was like that was funny. I felt really good to get like a really big rush of serotonin when I got it, because like it was a lot of work. Like I talked to a lot of people later on, and the majority of people guessed on that question. They just didn't know how to solve it. Yeah, and I got to like basically the 2 written questions with like 50 something minutes left. I wasn't good on time. But boy, those written questions each, like first one went up to like J, and the second one went to letter F. So they had a lot of parts, And it was a lot of working, to be honest. Like some of the parts require like 3 separate answers each, so like it was just a lot of calculation basically. And like I was working full speed, I knew what I was doing, but still, like, wow, that was tough. Like looking back on it, I do know I got a couple questions, a couple parts wrong, like especially one that had to do with coefficient performance things. I used like the wrong hot temperature because the peak temperature I found was like 450 Kelvin, but then turns out the hot temperature was actually just 318 Kelvin. So like even though it peaks, like the actual temperature that it maintains is 318, so that's why I use that as the hot temperature. I didn't know that because we had like practically zero practice with coefficient performance questions, like refrigerators basically. Like walking into the exam, talking to my friends, like we knew that we had like no entropy review. We had no review given for entropy and for coefficient performance, and barely any efficiency questions. And like we knew like if this appears on a test, this is going to be like our least practiced like subject. And that's literally what the 2 written questions were on. The first one was like coefficient performance, the second one was entropy based, like completely. It was like great. But I mean, even though I had like the least review with it, I still understood the concepts mostly. So yeah, I only messed up the coefficient performance because like I used like the wrong hot temperature, which happens. I still use the right formula, so half points, you know. And then the other question, I just used the wrong value. When I was like solving it in the first step, I got like 2.4 instead of, no, I got 2.3 instead of 1.4, just because I used like a wrong coefficient. And when I was double checking my test at the end, I noticed it. I'm like, oh no, I need to fix this. And I fixed it in like 2 of the steps, but then the very, very last step, I forgot I used that same value. So I still had 2.3, so I had 1.4 written. Like my answer doesn't really change. The entropy change is still positive, so like, irreversible. But yeah, like I just sort of forgot to change one of the values. I figured out later. I think this will be a good grade though. I got one multiple choice question wrong, so that'll be a 94 tops, and then I got like some points off for the coefficient performance and possibly that very last entropy question. So like high 80, low 90, probably. But most likely a high 80, but if it's weighed differently, maybe a low 90. So yeah, pretty, like, I'm feeling good about this test. And yeah, after that, like, came back, like, of course, like, it's bustling, everyone's like talking about the midterm. I was like, I think majority of people felt pretty decent about it. This one was easier than the first one, like I thought it would be. But just because it was easier doesn't mean it was like easier to do, if that makes sense. The questions like required a bit less thinking, but it was still a lot of work. So I know a lot of people really, really struggled on time. Like myself included, to be honest. I finished with like 5 minutes left to spare. So yeah. Then after that, like, came back, whatever, like, food, sleep, and like wake up in the morning. I had an 8 a.m. class that I actually had to go to. Or I thought I had to go to because we were supposed to have a team quiz in AppSci, but we ended up not having one, so there was no point in showing up to the class. But yeah, whatever. Then after that, we also had a ceremony for engineers at like 10 in the morning. It was like about, like once you graduate, you get the engineering rank, but here it's like as an undergraduate, you get like the iron pin. And basically it signifies like you're taking on the responsibilities of being an engineer even while you're in school. And like you promise not to like cheat through assignments and whatnot. So yeah, we stood there, like listened to some people talk about ethics, then like said an oath, and voila, we got a pin. Yeah, I don't know, it gave me a reason to dress up. I learned a new knot for my tie. It's called the Eldridge knot. It's the most intricate one I've learned by far. It's like so many steps. I still can't memorize it. I did it like twice. Still don't have it memorized. It's like 15 steps. So yeah, I'm gonna be watching videos again if I ever decide to do it. But it's a really nice knot actually. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, off topic. And then after I came back and I should have been like studied for chem, but I was quite burnt out at that point from studying. I had spent like 4 days in a row, basically just like brain at full capacity, and like I was reviewing notes and whatnot, like slides, and there was nothing for me to learn, to be honest. Like at that point, the test was just like how I would do in the midterm was dependent on how well I'd be able to apply my knowledge. There was really not much else for me to learn. Like I was just sitting there looking at my notes and I'm like I know this, I know this. So at that point, I just like didn't study much on the last day, to be honest. I don't regret that decision, but maybe I could have made a small difference. I don't know if I studied more intensely. Anyways, yeah, time for chem midterm. Yeah, and chem midterm was not good. Chem midterm was really, really bad. Um, all the past midterms for the past 3 years have been out of 45 points, and each question was 6 to 7 points on average. Like 5 to 8 was the range, with like only one question worth 8 points. This midterm was out of 40 points, and there was one question that was worth 10 points, and another question was worth 13 points. That's a lot. That's like basically 2 questions are worth more than 50% of the test. It's kind of absurd. So yeah, I like start the exam. I flip through it. I'm like, oh wow, like 2 big questions. I'll get started with them. I started with the 10-point question. It was a polymer kind of question. It took me like 20 minutes to solve out of an hour, so it took me longer than it should have. Just because like polymers are extensive, you know, there's so many like molecules to draw everywhere, and like yeah, I don't know, just a lot. There's a lot of parts to that question. I did pretty good on it. The one part I just messed up, I put like one hydrogen in the wrong place. It's supposed to be like an OH and NH2, I wrote like O and NH3. Just like literally misplaced the hydrogen just because like that is one thing I could have studied a bit better if I remember the functional group, so it was NH2 rather than NH3. Like that's one thing I just should have like known, to be honest, instead of making that small mistake. But that's like, even if I get a point off, it's like 2.5 points. It's not that intense. But then like there was another part of the question that was like, prove the bond order. Like, what is the bond order between like these molecules? Just like how many bonds basically, and it's just one bond, and it's like prove it mathematically, and it's like 1 is equal to 1. Like how the hell do you prove this? Like nobody understood that question, to be honest. So yeah, and then I got to a 13-point question, and like I couldn't do the first part. Nobody could do the first part actually. It was just bad. Like I don't know how you were supposed to do it. Like I've had time to like let it marinate and think about it. Still no idea how you were supposed to solve that problem. So the last question was astronomically bad, and like you can move. Like I solved that. I got some answer. I mean, I feel like it kind of made sense. Like my first 2 answers, like first 2 parts of the question, it was also like 6 parts. My first 2 parts made sense. But then at one point they introduced like a third variable, or like in the third question they introduced like a new variable, and that variable like made no sense basically. It was like a reaction releases this much heat, like which is what I found, but then it's like it takes this much heat to like create the reaction. So basically you get to talk about like bond enthalpies later on and like how they contributed to the reaction. And basically it took almost as much heat to start the reaction as much as it like released. And like we've never had that happen before. So that is possibly I was right. Like there's like 1 in like 100 chance that my numbers were correct and that it is what it was supposed to be. But usually like you would get a lot more heat released than what I got. Anyways, it was a tough reaction. It was a tough question, really tough. Like nobody could do it. Like talking to most people, everybody said that like I'll be surprised if I get any points for that last question. So I'm kind of thinking the same thing. So my grade is immediately a 66, like capped basically because of that last question. Like a third of the test and nobody could do it. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to complain too much about it. The rest of the test was mostly fine. There was like 2 more questions that were just really funky. Like one of them was like, they gave us like a polymer. It's like circle all the molecules that are in the same like plane, and like nobody knew what that meant. Like I just talked about like electron geometry and like circled some. I think I'm right, but like I could be wrong, and honestly like I just don't know. Like I just read that, I'm like what do you mean? And there was also one question that was so whack. Like they're like, there's 4 jars of like these substances. It's like calculate the partial pressure of like this substance, and it shows us like a pressure temperature graph, like a phase diagram, and like it's a jar. Like we don't have like a concrete amount of like how much there is, and like so yeah, that was, I don't know, that was something. Maybe it was a trick question. Now I think about it, maybe I should have just said 0 because maybe there is no gas. No, that's not true. Anyways, I don't know. That was tough. That was like quite bad. So there was like basically the last question was super tough, and then there was like 3 more like bullshit like set questions. The rest was fine, but like yeah, when you take all that into account, like I'm expecting someone along a 50 to 60. Yeah, so my grade's gonna tank a fair bit in chemistry. Oh yeah, this midterm was a lot harder than the 2022 midterm. Like the 2022 midterm was like tough, but like honestly it was tough because I just didn't know a couple things when I was reviewing. But like I learned them. I'm like, oh, okay, like yeah, I get this, right? And like 2021, like our midterm, just couldn't do it. Yeah, I think I've rambled on long enough, so I'll wrap this up quickly. And then Saturday was like a bit of a mental recovery day. I just stayed in my room all day. I watched all of Loki season 2, which is quite good. I like it. Like yeah, I liked it. It was really good. The last 3 episodes were really nice. And then Sunday was the grind day. I just worked all day. Like I had a bunch of assignments to do. I had to do like a CAD assignment again for like a prosthetic for like a handicapped person to use a joystick on an arcade machine. And yeah, CAD is always like cancer. As one of my group mates described it, so whatever. But my group was actually quite, like they liked the design I made. It was quite minimalistic and cute, so ended up being quite nice, but not what I had originally in mind. Yeah, anyways, I think I've rambled on long enough. I really didn't mean to. Like, I'm trying to keep these videos shorter because nobody wants to listen to me talk for that long. And I just like, I think it always gets out of hand because I have so much to say. Yeah, I'm back to daily uploads after this. So I'll be recording the day 80 video later tonight. And yeah, I'll see you guys around. Sorry for going AWOL, I just really need to focus on studying. Yeah, I hope you guys are doing good and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.